Okay, welcome again to human-computer interaction. So, we are now in chapter 4. So our topic for this chapter is all about HCI design. So we're now focusing in the how to design your HCI interface. Okay, in the first 3 chapters, we have already studied those notable principles. So we have also studied those guidelines and theories for the design of our interfaces for HCI. So in this chapter, we'll be learning these objectives. These are the learning objectives. So first, we have the overall design process. So under this design process, we have the requirements and the user analysis, and then we have the scenario and task modeling, and we have the interface selection and consolidation. So and we will learn also here the interface. So what are the interface selection options? We have the hardware platforms and the software interface components. So we are also going to know what is wireframing or the wireframe. And then in this chapter, it will give us an example on how to do the overall design process of HCI. So from requirements to user analysis, and then how to make a scenario and a task modeling, and then the interface selection and consolidation. So these are the learning objectives for this chapter. So next, let's proceed with the first one, the overall design process. So according here, HCI design is an integral part of a larger software design and is defined as the process of establishing the basic framework for user interaction, which includes the following iterative steps and activities. So when I say it says that HCI design is a very important or necessary jud siya in making developing your interface design. So it cannot function without this, no. So it is necessary to complete the whole task or the whole design of your interface. So then when we say iterative steps, so it includes iterative steps and activities. So those repeated steps. So mo siyang giingon na iterative. So HCI design includes all of the preparatory activities required to develop an interactive software product that will provide a high level of usability and a good user experience when it is actually implemented. So unsa kay itong kuan? High usability, meaning it achieve a goal, effective goal, and it is efficient and easy to use. Di ba mo sa tong previous chapter, the high usability. So we have these 4 iterative steps using a concrete example after a short explanation of the respective steps. So sa overall design process nato, there are 4 processes, iterative steps. So we have here first the requirements analysis. So any software design starts with a careful analysis of the functional requirements. So for interactive software with a focus on the user experience, we take a particular look at functions that are to be activated directly by the user through interaction. So these are the functional task requirements and functions that are important in realizing certain aspects of the user experience. So these are your functional user interface requirements. So even though this might not be directly activated by the user. So that is imong requirement analysis. Imo lang ikuan is what does this interface or software need to do. Nganong naghimo ka anina isa ka interface or application. Then how will this does this need to perform? So mao na sa ang imong requirements, i-list down nimo all the requirements from the function niya, no, function anina nganong naghimo ka anina software, para asa ni siya ana. So mao na siya ang requirement analysis. So that's mao na siya imong first step. Then kung na kay na come up na develop na requirement analysis, then you have to identify or your user analysis. So here as we have emphasized previously, so a user analysis is also an essential step in HCI design. So the result of the user analysis will be reflected back to the requirements, and this could identify additional UI requirements. So ang result nimo sa analysis, so if naay kuan, it will give reflect siya back sa imong requirements. So kung kailangan daay kaanin ng mga users, so you have to put that again sa imong requirement analysis. So it is also simply a process to reinforce the original requirements analysis to further accommodate the potential users in a more complete way. For instance, no, kanina particular age group, so might need this interaction features. So you have to reflect it back to your requirements. So unsay ma-identify nimo, no, for kung unsay mga imong mga users sa imong interface or application. So that's the user analysis. So for the third step, we have scenario and task modeling. So it is also equally important, same sa user analysis. So it is most important point sa interaction modeling. So identifying the application task structure and the sequential relationships between the different elements. So from this task model, we can also start now to draw a more detailed scenario or storyboard to envision how the system would be used and to assess both the appropriateness of the task model and the feasibility of the given requirements. Through this process of storyboarding, a rough visual profile of the interface can be sketched. So mag-start na tag storyboard unsay mga scenario or scene sa imong himuon na interface. So from the first page kaha or first interface nimo, unsay ma-function niya. So you can have a storyboard or the scenario unsay mabuhat sa isa ka user. So the storyboard will serve as another helpful medium in selecting the actual software or hardware interface. So mahabalan nimo kung unsa ni software or hardware interface imong magamit. So it will also serve as a starting point for drawing the objective class diagram, message diagrams, and the use of cases for preliminary implementation and programming. So here magamit nimo ang mga diagrams, objective class, message. So before ma-implement nimo ang imong interface or application. So that's for scenario and task modeling. So mura siya storyboard nimo sa imong application. And then next we have the fourth interface selection, the fourth design process. We have the interface selection and consolidation. So for each of the subtasks and scenes in the storyboard, particularly software interface components, interaction technique and hardware choices will be made. So unsa man siya mga software interface components. So like mga widgets nimo, mga widgets, then unsa pa. Then for interaction technique, example kung voice recognition, unsa pa mga interaction or oral, oral like voice, then have to mga oral is hearing, voice recognition, unsa ba siya, touch ba nimo, interaction technique. And your hardware like mga sensors, mga buttons, display on, etc. So the chosen individual interface components need to be consolidated into a practical package, because not all of these interface components may be available on a working platform. So for example, for a particular subtask lugar, ang designer might have chosen naggamit siya voice recognition to be the most mufit siya na interaction technique. But however, ang required platform does not support a voice sensor. So mangita lang siya another alternative that will have to be device. So pwede ra na siya inana. So from here, certain choices will have to be retracted. So ma-withdraw nimo to siya in the interest of employing a particular interaction platform. So mao na siya ang kanang interface selection and consolidation. Mag-select ka kung saan mga interface, then you have to consolidate dayon. So those are the four iterative steps under your overall design process. So we have first the requirements analysis, then user analysis, then your storyboard, to siya katong scenario and task modeling, and then we have here the interface selection and the consolidation. So before going to proceed to next. So we have here a figure, So this is the overall iterative HCI design process. So as you can see from your requirements, kung unsa mong user of task analysis mo na imong mga requirements, then you will create the scenario or storyboard, then katong mga objective class diagram dayon before nimo ma-implement or ma-test ang imong interface or application. So from dani lang to here is mao rin siya imong HCI design, the process nimo. So before nimo ma-implement ang imong interface or na develop na application. So mao na siya ang concept kanina figure. Okay, and then So before we go through a concrete example sa atong HCI design, so we first review some possible and representative interfaces to choose, no, from magkuhan sa ta kung unsay mga hardware and software na possible na to gamiton during sa atong HCI design. So we have here the interface selection options. So we have in HCI design we can select and kung unsa naman interface atong gamiton sa like sa hardware or the software. So we have here the hardware platforms. So different interactions and subtasks may require various individual devices. So we take a look at the hardware options in terms of the larger computing platforms, which are composed of the usual devices. So the choice of a design configuration for the hardware interaction platform is largely determined by the characteristics of the task application that necessitates a certain operating environment. So in designing a HCI interface, we need to kung saan mga hardware platforms atong pwede magamit, mga possible na gamit. So here we've listed, no, we have listed different platforms that are suited for and reflect various operating environments. So we have here first the desktop. So I think we are familiar with this, no, the desktop computer. Then we have also the smartphones or the handhelds. Then we have tablets also, or the pads. And then those embedded computers. So built-in computers, no? Okay. Then so as you can see here in the picture, in the above picture, it making sales with pad-like devices leveraging on their mobility and relatively large screen size. So ano siya so nagamit using pad-like devices ng iPad. Then we have the embedded interaction platform, built-in mga devices na sa car ba ni? So then kaning sa tawagan na siya na device. So we have also other platforms, hardware platforms. We have TV or consoles. Then if you're familiar with the kiosk, no? I think familiar man yun mo kanang diya sa during enrollment magkuhan mo access o payment, no, sa cashier. You magkuha mo priority number, right, sa kiosk. So that's example of kiosk na computer. And then so this one TV console, so TV and mo na sila mga various kiosk installation. So sa gym mo dinani ba or dia if kabantay mo diya sa kilid sa gym, biometric sa mga employee nani. So we have also virtual reality, so large surround and high resolution projection screen, head mounted display, mga 3D na 3D sound system, 3D tracking sensors, mga virtual reality computer. Then we have the freeform stationary special purpose hardware platforms consisting of a customized configuration of individual devices best suited for a given task. So mga special purpose hardware platforms naka-customize na freeform man. So in this figure, we have example of a virtual interaction platform. Virtual, mga 3D. So here, example and from the we have the pen tablet, then the glass kanisha, the glass type see-through heads-up display yung gigamit. Then camera integrated scuba gear, ang scuba, and ito naka-integrate na, naka-embed na camera diya. Then we have also the special military helmet for tactical command and control. So nakabantay mo na sa mga movies, no? Mga movies na gamit mo sila mga tactical helmet. Then we have some multi-touch tablet at tabletop platform. So these are the possible example of special purpose interfaces at mga freeform. So nakabalo na taon sa possible na mga hardware platforms ang pwede magamit. So for now, unsa na po yung mga software interface components. So one here is Windows or the layers. Modern desktop computer interfaces are designed around Windows, which are visual output channels and abstractions for individual computational processes. So for a single application, a number of subtasks may be needed concurrently and thus must be interfaced through multiple windows. So for example, if you're nag-open kag multiple windows, mo display ang mga windows, or mag-overlap with so overlapping windows may be used for that large, para na sila sa mga large displays, mga large screen. But however, as the display size decreases, non-overlapping layers must be used in which individual layers are activated and turned off by flipping through item. So to understand it more, naatay ko andani sample na figure. So here sa figure na left, it's mo tong gingon niya multiple ang windows yung gina-open. So when you mouse over ani na window, it means this is the active window. So the rest is inactive na. But kung mag-click na pod ka sa yung back lugar na window, so mo na pod mag-active window. So then sa right side, mo na siya ang sample na flipping. Mag-flip lang ka sa window. As you notice, no, sa inyong mobile phones, na naman nga kahitabo. So naman na silang modern desktop user interfaces, matong multiple overlapping and the non-overlapping. So let's proceed with the icons. Interactable objects may be visually represented as a compact small pictogram such as an icon. So clickable icons are simple and intuitive. So as a compact representation designed for facilitated interaction, icons must be designed to be as informative or distinctive as possible despite their small size and compactness. So mo siya ang mga I think familiar mo sa mga icons, mga emoji. The recent Windows Metro style interface has introduced a new type of icon called a tile that can dynamically change its look with useful information associated with what the icon is supposed to represent. So mo na siya ang sample katong sa Microsoft Metro style interfaces. So naka-tile na siya. Then we have here below ang sample sa mga icons, the Google Chrome and the Angry Birds. And then menus. So we have also allow activations of commands and tasks through selection rather than recall. Typical menus are organized as a one-dimensional list or a 2D array of items. So familiar ta aning mga menus. So selection of a menu item involves 3 subtasks. Sa mga 3 subtasks, activating the menu and laying out the items, then visually scanning and moving through the items and choosing the wanted item. So all of these subtasks are realized by making discrete inputs like example by mouse click, screen touch, pause button, and voice command or etc. So we have here example of different styles of menus. So we have the pull down, then the pop up, the 2D application bar, and then the tabs. Then we have also here the buttons type, the checkbox and radio buttons, the slider menu, and the image map. So mga sila mga example sa menu. Then we have here a table where to use different menu types. So mga menu types and yung mga usage. Well, like pull down, para na siya sa mga top level na main menu nimo. Then the pop up, object specific, context specific, and the rest. Mga siya ang table sa where to use different menu styles. Then we have direct interaction. So unsa man siya? Direct interaction. So the mouse touch-based interaction is strongly tied to the concept of direct and visual interaction. So the mouse made it possible for user to apply a direct metaphoric touch upon the target objects rather than commanding the operating system to indirectly involve the job. So mga direct contact na siya in interaction. So direct and visual has further extended to direct manipulation. So mga example ani kanang dragging and dropping, no? Drag and dropping mo sa imong mouse, and cutting and pasting mo na sila, and rubber banding mo na sila katong sa multiple games. And mo na sila mga example sa mga kanisa mga direct interaction. Chase it up. Okay, we're now in GUI elements. So here, software or interaction objects are mostly visual. So we have already discussed the windows, the icons, the menus, and the mouse pointer based interactions. So which are, of course, these are essential elements for the graphical user interface or the GUI. Also, these are sometimes referred to as the WIMP or the window, icon, mouse, and pointer. So in this, in considering interface options, it is very important to understand the following representatives of GUI elements. So we have here the following components. So text box used for making or short, medium, alpha numeric input. Then we have toolbar, a small group of frequently used icons, organized horizontally or vertically. Then we have forms. It's a combination of menus, buttons, and text boxes for long thematic input. Then we have dialogue, combo boxes. It's a mixture of menus and buttons and text box for short mix mode input. So we have here sa example of the pictures of components, GUI components. So here in letter A, it sample of a form, combinations sa mga buttons, menus, etc. Then we have here letter B, it's a toolbar. Then C and D are the dialog box and the combo boxes. So those are the GUI components. Then okay, 3D interface in 2D interaction input space. So the standard GUI elements that are operated and presented in 2D space is often not sufficient. So the mismatch in degrees of freedom brings about fatigue and inconvenience. So for this reason, non-WIMP based interfaces such as 3D motion gestures are gaining popularity. So nowadays, kato na mga non-WIMP based interfaces are gaining popularity. So mga example ato to mga cloud computing. So later after this we'll be talking about non-WIMP mga interfaces. So aside from a task such as 3D games and navigation, it also possible to organize the 2D operated GUI elements in 3D virtual space. It is not clear whether such interface brings about any particular advantages, because despite the added dimension, the occlusion due to overlap will remain, as the interface is viewed from only one direction. So in fact, the user can be burdened with the added control if one needs to place or manipulate GUI objects in 3D dimension. So it is sometimes employed for aesthetic reasons and wow factor. So that's why dili siya pwede in 3D interaction, because it can burden the user once it is added in your GUI. So it's 3D katong mga 3D are added na siya added dimension in which it can give aesthetic appeal and wow factor to the user. So as you can see here in the figure, so this is an example of mga 3D interfaces. Okay. So mao tong 3D. So we're now on the other interfaces, the non-WIMP. So with the continuing advances in interfaces, technologies, and changes in the computing environment, new interfaces are starting to making their way into our everyday lives. So the cloud computing environment has enabled running computationally expensive interface algorithms, which non-WIMP interfaces often require, over less powerful devices against large service populations. So here, honest lang itong they are more now gaining popularity nowadays. So like here in the cloud computing, cloud computing, wala na siya it is computer system resources, no, especially mga data. So they are gastors lang mga data and computing power without the active user. So more like data center and available to data center which are available to many users over the internet. Siya ang cloud computing, mga non-web interfaces. Okay, before that, so those are the software interfaces components. So we have discussed the first is the windows, the icons, the menus, and so pa, direct interaction, the GUI components, the 3D interfaces, and the other non-web interfaces. So we are now in wireframing. So the interaction modeling and interface options that can be put together concretely using the so-called wireframing process. So it originated from making rough specifications for website page design and resembles scenarios or storyboards. So it depicts the page layout or arrangement of the UI objects and how they respond to each other. So wireframes can be pencil drawings or sketches on a whiteboard, or they can be produced by means of a broad array of free or commercial software applications. So kaning wireframe is a two-dimension drawing pages on your sa imong interface. So if you're, it's like for example, if you're designing a mobile app, so you need to create a wireframe on each scene, in each interface when you when you want para makuha ang imong para makuha ang flow or ang direction sa imong application. So it also siyang wireframe is used to also define and plan the information by hierarchy on the page of the screen. So as you, basically ang paghimog wireframe is just can be used in hand drawing or using by using pen and paper, or you can digitize it, no, kung dili nimo pero much better man siguro Japan ang hand drawing. So but in the digital drawing, you can organize your ideas clearly. There is a clarity. So what will be your final product, or that will be laid out on your interface. So it also ensure consistency on your interface. So that's the wireframing. Then wireframes produced by these tools can be stimulated to show interface behavior, and depending on the tools, the interface logic can be exported for actual code implementation. So there are tools that allow the user to visually specify UI elements and their configuration, and then automatically generate code. So na mga tools like mga wireframing tools that allows to keep maka-generate dan siya code, no? So through wireframing, the developer can specify and flesh out the kinds of information displayed, the range of functions available, and their priorities, alternatives, and interaction flow. So this is an example of wireframing tool. So designing the content of a screen. And this one is nandili na left, and overall interaction behavior, how screen switch upon the interaction. So moral flow sa imong application. So or ma-organize unsa yung dagan sa imong application. So according to the kanang why is it called as a wireframe? Because architects and other professionals who needed to show off a 3D model through a 2D medium use blueprint style, so wireframe. So they call it wireframe daw because the line art look like wires. As you can see here, they look like wires, so that's why they call it wireframes. So when you draw your your wireframe on a paper or using the paper and pen, mas okay siya, no, kung you can edit it madali ra nimo easy to edit, then you can handy siya, then you can make things more basic jud. So masyado jud write using paper and pen. So then next thing you do dayon is to make it in a digital drawing. So once you're happy with your hand drawing, you can proceed to your next digital drawing, like using wireframing tools. So it allows you to keep track of the progress of your wireframe and document certain decision along the way. So you can also get inspired for mga example na wireframe, like you can visit the Dribble ng mga sites or the Behance. Dribble, D-R-I-B-B-B-L-E, or the Behance, D-E-A-H-A-N-C-E. Just to give you some ideas, no? So, na siya ang wireframing. So, you have to maghimo ka blueprint on what your design look like. So, na siya ang wireframing. Alright, so we're done with those processes, those overall design process for HCI design. So now we'll take a look on one of here. We have here an example. So tanaw nato on how this application implement, or I mean it's not implement, it's how this application go on with the process of HCI design. So we have here the main purpose of these applications. Our kuanday atong name sa ato application dani is No Sheets version 1. So this is an example of example na siya na undergo of design sa HCI. So here the main purpose of this application is to use the smartphone to present sheet music, so thereby eliminating the need to handle paper sheet music. So here in this figure, replacing paper sheet music with the smartphone. So as you can see here in the left, so naggamit pa ni siya paper sheet music. So while on the other side, nagamit na siya katong gi-apply niya na develop niya na application which nagamit siya og smartphone iyang iyang hardware na gigamit. So no more flying pages, no more awkward flipping and page searching. Alright, so the first, ang first steps or steps na imong giun when you are doing when you are doing the HCI design. So we've learned that the first process is the requirement analysis, and we have second, you have to identify your user analysis. Then after that, you're making a scenario and task modeling. Then after that, you have to choose your interface selection, and you have to consolidate it. Okay, so here anin ako mo na yung requirement analysis. So an initial requirements list may look something like the one in the table. So mo na siya, kung maghimo mo og requirements the same as this one, look like the same. So note that this again would be part of any software development process. So here we focus more on the HCI related requirements for the sake of brevity. So yung initial assessment sa yung requirements for sa yung application. So number one niya, you use the smartphone to present the transcribed music-like sheet. So transcribe siya includes all those for basic accompaniment like the chord information, mo sila. So gamit lang ang gamitin yung smartphone to transcribe music. Then eliminate the need to carry and manage physical sheet. Store music transcription files using a simple file format. Then help the user effectively accompany the music by time. Help the user effectively practice the accompaniment. Help users sing along by showing the lyrics and beats in a time fashion. So these are yan yung base initial requirements for this sheet. So, diba, as you can see, as you observe sa yung requirements, diba, atong use, diba, atong requirement analysis, kuha na siya, nag-entails ni siya sa atong mga function sa atong i-develop na application or interface. So dana na nato mabutang ang tanan na requirements or what unsay mabuhat ani na kuan what this application will do, unsay mga function o unsa pa katong ban pa. So i-review to nyo ang atong gi-discuss sa requirements analysis. Alright, so after sa requirement, then we have to analyze our user. So the typical user for no sheet is a smartphone owner and novice intermediate piano player, perhaps someone who wants to show off their musical skill at a piano bar. So since a smartphone is used, we would have to expect a reasonable power of sight for a typical user. So here, nag-con siya, i-identify niya sa mga user. So then ikuanda niya how this human factor, diba ka remember mo itong na chapter 3, human factor, dani iyang gikuan ang visual na sensation. So consider niya ang visual na sensation kay magdepende man sa kuan user, no? So the power of sight for typical usage. So mo na siya as you can see here. So yung point of view ba to, no? Ito mga sa visual lagi sa 50 nana. So you have to consider those things, right? Then so a very minimal user analysis resulted in interface requirements as shown in this table. So note that for now most of the requirements or choices are rather arbitrary without clear justifications. So dani this table is user interface requirements for a very minimal user analysis. So gikuan siya po niya human factor katong color, mga brightness, sa yung gamiton, the paging, no, yung design, all ikuan na niya para sa requirements pa sa user. So inana lang siya ang pagkuan sa user analysis. So after na kuha na nato atong requirements analysis, then we have already done with the user analysis, then we'll have to make a scenario and task modeling. So based on the short requirements in the table, we derive a hierarchical simple task model as shown in the following list in figure. So mao ni siya iyang scenario. So as you can see, a simple task model for no sheets. The top level application has 6 subtasks. Muna yung mga subtasks. Muna siya after ninyo makuha, so maghimo mo og scenario ko kung sa yung mga subtasks. Alright, so from here, from the top main menu, it's na siya. So mao ni siya ang top main menu niya. Then mga subtask dayon. So mao na siya. You have to make a hierarchical diagram or figure. And then so this is the task modeling, no? Task modeling kung unsay each task is to be activated directly by the user through an interface. So you have to define unsa ang task niya per subtask. So manay sila select songs, unsa na sila, select tempo, show time music. So you have to define it. Then the subtasks as actions to be taken by the user can be viewed computationally as action events or reversely as states that are activated according to the action events. So in the figure, it shows a possible state transition diagram for no sheets. So through such a perspective, one can identify the precedence relationship among the subtasks. So from the top main menu here, in the middle, the user is allowed to select, to set, change view, the preference, tempo, songs, and software information. So allow siya. And then the user is also able to play view and the time display of the musical information, but only after a song has been chosen. So kung magamit lang nimo siya when you have already nakapili na kag song. So mo na iyang iyang function, iyang mga subtasks. So then next is after task modeling, you'll do a storyboard dayon. So a storyboard is then drawn based on the task model to further envision its usage and possible interface choices. So the following figures will show the initial storyboards for no sheets, illustrating the motivational context, a typical usage scenario and sequences, and rough model interface sketches. So mo na din to ang mga scenario at storyboard. So mag-create na din ka. So mo na yung first na storyboard. Want to show off my piano skills but don't have my notes handy. Wala na siya. So my smartphone. Nagali na siya yung smartphone, which is naka-install dito ang no sheets na application. So then in this figure, typical usage scene, the top level main menu. So nagkuha na din siya, bring na din siya sa new sheets na application, then nana din yung mga subtasks. Then interface looks for 3 subtasks, example song selection, na din siya na kubi-kubi. And then interface looks during play and the 3 concurrently activatable subtasks. So mauna din to, nag-play, information, gamit na niya. And then so moving between view stages and quitting the application by using the standard Android menu button interface. So muna siya yung ipang kuri-kuri ang mga ang no sheets na application. So here, that's the making a scenario and task modeling. So natural yung paghimo. Kimo kag task modeling mo, yung structure, sequence task, then making a scenario dayon, storyboard. Mo na siya ang process. And then after that, the fourth process, we have interface selection and consolidation. So the table shows the final decision and justifications. So it is very important that we try to adhere to the HCI principles, guidelines, and theories to justify and prioritize our decisions. So initial finalization of the interface design choice for no sheets. So mo ni siya, finalize na din niya. So inani rajap na ninyo. So from the subtask, interface decision choice, then justification din niya. So mo na sila. Okay, so here, uh, this figure shows that it is based on the use of commercial wireframing tool that shows the final interface loop and the interaction flow. So, maghimo na din mo wireframing. So, mo na din ni itong wireframing. So, you have to use, so, di ba wireframing, you have to, mas better is you have to draw it, hand draw. Then, after you're happy with it, then you transfer it on a digital wireframing tools para mas kuhanin mo kuhanin mo ang imong application. So mo ni siya simple a sample na wireframing. So you can maybe I can give an example as later or some other kung napatay time, so I'll show some sample of wireframing. So I think we're done. So moto siya no ang no sheets application version 1. So may agi siya og processes. So from requirements, then go with user analysis, then make din siya scenario and task modeling, and then we have then interface selection and consolidation. So that's the process class of the HCI, the overall process of HCI design. So you have to go with the first requirement analysis, then you go with the user analysis, then making a scenario and task modeling, and then the interface selection and consolidation. So that's it for this chapter 4. I hope you learned something. So I hope na namoy idea, no, na kapalo mo ang side process. So if ever na namoy kuan idea kung sa inyong buhaton for the finals or for the project, I guess. So from this time, so you can decide now, you can plan. So kung sa inyong pwede makuha na application or interface. So you can apply right now kung sa inyong na-learn ani na chapter katong overall na design sa HCI. So I think this is the end for this chapter for the HCI design. And thank you for your time and cooperation.